There's a quiet thing that happens in backyards where the keeper steps outside every single morning before the coffee is even cold. The hens lay better. Not because they love anyone, not because they're grateful, because something else is going on, and most keepers never name it out loud. You'll hear people say that hens lay more eggs when they're given attention, and in a way, that's true. But the reason is almost never what people think it is. Attention does not pull eggs out of a hen. Attention changes everything around the egg. That's the part this video is about. When a hen is laying well, it's almost never about one thing. It's about a stack of small conditions, lining up daylight, age, feed, water, calm flock dynamics, clean bedding, predictable routine, and a body that isn't fighting stress, mites, or low-grade illness. Attention is not a replacement for any of those. Attention is the reason most of those stay in good shape, week after week. Because the keeper who walks the coop every morning sees the empty waterer before it becomes a real problem. The keeper who lingers for 5 minutes notices the hen who's standing a little too still. The keeper who looks under the roost bar before grabbing the egg basket catches the mite outbreak when it's still small. That's the real link between attention and egg count. Once you see it, the whole picture changes. Hens are routine animals. Their bodies run on daylight cues, feeding rhythm, roosting time, and a sense of social order that they reconfirm every single day. When that routine is steady, their bodies don't have to spend energy adjusting. The reproductive system in a laying hen is sensitive, not fragile, but sensitive. Stress, sudden changes, predator pressure, feed gaps, water shortages, or cold drafts can all show up first as a drop in eggs. University extension guidance for backyard flocks commonly notes that consistency in feed, water, light, and handling tends to support steady laying more than any single supplement or trick. That's not a magic bullet, that's just biology meeting routine. So when someone says their attentive flock lays more, what they're really describing is a flock living inside a more stable environment. Same time the coop opens, same feed, same fresh water, same predictable footsteps coming up the path. The hens don't need to love that routine, they just need it to be there. Here is where attention earns its keep. Most things that knock a flock off lay don't start as big dramatic events, they start small. A waterer that tipped overnight, a feeder that clogged at the bottom, a scaly leg mite barely starting on one hen, red mites hiding in the cracks under the roost bar, a piece of fence that a raccoon worked loose at the corner. A keeper who only checks the egg basket sees none of these things until the egg count drops. By then, the problem is usually a week deep. A keeper who walks the coop sees them on day one. This is the real reason an attentive flock lays better. Not because the hens are happier in some emotional sense, because the keeper is finding the small problems while they're still small. You learn this fast once you start really looking. The hen standing puffed up in the corner at 9 a.m. is not the same hen who was scratching in the run yesterday. The hen at the back of the feeder line for 3 days in a row is telling you something about pecking order or about her own health. The droppings under the roost are the most honest report card a flock has, and they change before the egg count does. None of this requires a special skill. It requires showing up and looking. This is where the conversation usually goes wrong online. People hear attention helps hens lay better and turn it into a story about love. The truth is more boring and more useful. Predator pressure is one of the biggest hidden reasons backyard flocks slow down. You don't actually need a predator to get inside the coop. You just need one circling at night. A raccoon working the latch, a possum on the roof, a neighborhood dog patrolling the fence line at dusk. Hens can sense those visits even when nothing breaks in. They roost tighter, sleep worse, and lay less. The keeper, who walks the perimeter every morning, notices the dug spot at the corner of the run, the scratched paint on the coop door, the feathers on the wrong side of the fence. None of that shows up in the egg basket directly, but it shows up indirectly every day until it's fixed. Mites are the same story. A small population of red mites in the cracks of a roost bar can drain a flock for weeks before a keeper realizes anything is wrong. Hens that scratch more, dust bathe more often, and look a little dull in the comb, maybe carrying a load the keeper hasn't seen yet. Long-term flock managers often describe the same pattern. The flocks that lay best are the flocks where someone is checking under the roost, running a hand along the perches, and looking at vents and feathers with intent, not just feeding and walking away. You can't love a mite off a hen, you have to find it. Now, think about what a hen experiences when her keeper is consistent. She sees the same person open the coop at roughly the same time every morning. She hears the same sounds. The feed scoop hits the feeder the same way. The waterer gets refilled before it's empty. The eggs get collected without anyone chasing her off the nest. That kind of predictability lowers low-grade, chronic stress. The flock doesn't have to brace for anything. Their bodies aren't running on a constant background hum of unfamiliarity. Calm flocks lay better. That's not sentimental. It's practical. A body that isn't dumping energy into stress responses has more energy available for laying, immune function, and feather quality. You can usually see this in how a flock behaves when the keeper steps inside the run. The flock barely breaks stride. The hens who were dust bathing keep dust bathing. The ones at the feeder don't scatter. They've sorted out that this person is part of the routine, not a disruption to it. Hens may associate your presence with food, safety, and predictable routines. That association is real, and it's useful, but it's not the same thing as affection. It's pattern recognition meeting reduced stress, and it shows up in the egg basket. Here's where it's worth being honest, because the internet blurs this constantly. Holding a hen, talking to a hen, hand-feeding a hen, none of that, by itself, makes her lay more. There are flocks that get a lot of cuddling and lay poorly because the coop is dirty, the feed is inconsistent, or the run is wet. There are flocks that almost never get touched and lay beautifully because the keeper has dialed in the basics. Affection is not the variable, husbandry is. What attentive keepers are usually doing, even when they describe it as caring deeply about their chickens, is something more practical. They're noticing, they're adjusting, they're catching a draft in the coop in October. They're seeing the comb that's gone a little pale. They're cleaning the nest box before it gets caked. They're refilling the grit container without being told. The affection might be the reason they show up. The husbandry is the reason the eggs show up. It's worth saying clearly, attention does not replace nutrition, daylight, ventilation, or veterinary care. A hen who is nutritionally short or fighting illness will not lay more because someone holds her. If you are seeing signs like labored breathing, sudden weight loss, bloody droppings, multiple birds going off feed, or a sudden flock-wide drop in laying paired with illness signs, that is not a behavior story. That is a health story. If you are concerned about your bird's health, contact a poultry veterinarian or your local extension office. A YouTube video cannot diagnose a sick bird. But for the everyday questions, why is my flock laying a little less? Why does it feel off? Why are the eggs uneven? Attention is almost always the lever that moves first. So when someone tells you that hens lay more for the people who pay attention, they're right. They're just usually wrong about why. It isn't love. It isn't gratitude. It isn't the hens deciding to reward someone. It's that attention turns a coop into a managed environment instead of a forgotten one. Small problems get caught early. Routines stay steady. Predator pressure gets answered. Mites get noticed. Water is fresh. Feed is full. The flock isn't bracing. That's the environment hens lay best in. And that environment is built one quiet morning at a time by a keeper who is willing to stand there and actually look. You don't need to be a perfect homesteader. You don't need a fancy coop. You just need to be the person who shows up and notices. Here's the small thing worth trying this week. Before you check the egg basket tomorrow morning, give yourself 5 minutes in the run first. Don't grab eggs. Don't fill anything yet. Just stand there and watch. Look at how the flock is moving. Look at who's at the feeder and who's hanging back. Look at the droppings under the roost. Look at the comb color on your top layer. Run your eyes along the corners of the run for any sign something tried to get in overnight. Then, after those 5 minutes, do the rest of your routine. Do that for 7 days. and see what you start catching that you used to miss. That's the real answer to the question this video started with, and it's the real reason attentive flocks lay more.